sheriff's deputy faces felony charges related to a scheme to steal thousands in federal grant funding. Kenneth Lawson was arrested today and booked into the Orleans Parish Jail on multiple charges, and that includes theft and bank fraud. Lawson is accused of creating a fake business to misappropriate more than $75,000 in federal funds for personal use. In a separate case, OPSO says warrants have been issued for two other people accused of misappropriating more than $90,000 from the OPSO Inmate Trust Fund. So this scheme involved issuing an unauthorized checks to conceal cash discrepancies in former inmate accounts. Sheriff Susan Hudson says these actions do not reflect the values of her office.
These actions are reprehensible and stand in direct opposition to the values of the Orleans Parish Sheriff's Office. And these findings reflect our unwavering commitment to identifying and addressing unethical behavior.
Sheriff Hudson says her office has made substantial changes to protect against financial discrepancies in the future, and those changes include updated authorization and verification procedures, a cashless system, and insurance coverage for inmates impacted by theft.
Back about 4 months ago, and watching that footage, you can see the officer approaching the scene where responding police were told was an active shooting scene. Now, in less than a minute, she encounters two people with a gun. One had an AR-style rifle, and she yells at them to drop the guns, and then multiple shots are heard on the video. But now, through ballistic analysis, police have learned that she fired 5 rounds. One struck a 20-year-old woman, another hit a 23-year-old woman, both of them innocent bystanders. Then the third bullet did hit one of the intended targets, was the armed suspect. Now, all the victims who were shot did survive and were released from the hospital, while the female officer is now on administrative duty without her service weapon.
My heart goes out to them. It's whether they were shot unintentionally or intentionally, it's not a good day.
Good morning. Welcome to the Bad Apple Report. It's 7:30 a.m. bright and early right here at home on the range. Thank you so much for being here today, folks. I really appreciate it. We're going to start it out in South Carolina, where we've got a now former South Carolina deputy charged with mistreating dogs. That's a bad apple, all right. Anderson County, South Carolina. A former Anderson County deputy has been arrested after deputies said they found multiple emaciated dogs at his home. According to the Anderson County Sheriff's Office on Tuesday, Alton Davis, age 36, was arrested and charged with 4 counts of ill treatment of animals, 1 count of improper burial. He was placed in the Anderson County Detention Center on a $20,000 bond. Whoa. According to the Sheriff's Office, Brown previously worked for the Sheriff's Office until 2022 when he left for another job. Alton's arrest came when Anderson County Animal Control was called to a home on Sarah Simpson Road in Iva after someone reported seeing emaciated shepherds there. When they arrived at the home, deputies said they found 4 dogs, one of which had died, which appeared to be severely underweight. The 3 living dogs were given to Anderson County Paws for treatment. Okay. All right. That's a bad apple. He made it on the Bad Apple Report. Let's move on with the show.
And qualified immunity in the state.
It makes it almost impossible to sue the government in the civil courts.
Qualified immunity comes from a Supreme Court ruling decades ago that says public officials like police officers, university employees, or social workers cannot be taken to a civil court unless they violate a clearly established constitutional right. And the legal standards were clear enough that any reasonable official would know they were acting in an unlawful manner. Director of Government Affairs for the Fraternal Order of Police of Ohio says qualified immunity is a necessary protection for state employees, like law enforcement, and says this amendment would make recruitment difficult.
You're going to take a step back and say, hey, look, if this is something I really want to do, if putting myself, my family, my home, my cars, college funds in jeopardy because of some frivolous, lawsuit.
The proposal would not require government employees to pay out of pocket for any civil case, but it would be the government employer, like the city or a specific department, that has to pick up the costs.
If they're not training their personnel, and if they don't have protocols in place that respect our rights, then that's the problem with the government employer right there. We are quite content to see it going forward now.
If you're making those decisions within the scope of the law, you should be protected.
A senior diplomat in the U.S. Embassy in Finland says he's the victim of whistleblower retaliation by the State Department and wants Congress to investigate. According to a report in Punchbowl News, Mark Lindsay says he's being forced out of his diplomatic post after publicly asking Congress to let him provide them with a classified briefing on Havana syndrome. According to documents and emails provided to Punchbowl, the department is asking Lindsay to sign pre-drafted cables that say he's requesting a curtailment of tour of duty for personal reasons. Punchbowl reported that Lindsay refused to sign the cable and asked the Congressional Foreign Affairs and Foreign Relations Committees to investigate. The chairman of the House committee said they're looking into it, while the top Democrat on the Senate panel said they provided Lindsay with resources to help him navigate the situation. Lindsay was diagnosed with traumatic brain injuries after experiencing Havana syndrome. He and his family were medically evacuated from China in 2018. Havana syndrome symptoms include headaches, tinnitus, blurry vision, vertigo, cognitive dysfunction, and more. The State Department paid Lindsay and his family more than $1 million for their ailments. The exact cause of Havana syndrome is unknown. In Lindsay's op-ed to Congress, he wrote it was caused by, quote, pulsed microwave standoff attacks by Russian military intelligence operatives. Lindsay's claim aligns with the findings of a 60 Minutes investigation.
His study found directed pulsed radiofrequency energy appears to be the most plausible mechanism. For example, a focused beam of microwaves or acoustic ultrasound.
A 2023 intelligence report found it did not result from the actions of a foreign adversary. The exact number of people who have experienced the phenomenon is unknown, but at least 334 Americans have qualified for care in the military health system due to their symptoms.
Among other claimed violations, Mark Longo says he and his wife were not granted due process throughout the last several months in regard to having Peanut and Fred. After the DEC came to their house in October, the Longos say their house was torn apart, their companion animals were killed, and they were treated unfairly by officials. Peanut the squirrel and Fred the raccoon were seized from Mark and Daniela Longo and euthanized on October 30th to be tested for rabies. Now the Longos are seeking justice for not only their beloved animals, but for themselves.
We want to know how these procedures were, that they failed. Why was I asked about cameras in my house? Why was I detained for 5 hours without being arrested? Why was my wife's immigration status questioned? Why didn't I get due process? Why was I silenced? Why was I intimidated not to use my phone?
The notice of claims indicate pending legal action against the New York State Attorney General's Office, DEC, State Department of Health, along with Chemung County, the County Health Department, Elmira Police, and Elmira Animal Control. Not only are the Longos claiming they and their animals were not granted due process, but they also say their First, Fourth, Fifth, and 14th Amendment rights were violated on the day their house was raided.
I don't want to take away the focus on Fred and Peanut. The justice is for these animals and moving forward to make sure. But that's a big thing for us. Is I've never been in trouble before. I've never been in the face of the law before. And then to have 9 people and 6 of them have guns show up to your house and detain you and falsely arrest you for 5 hours, it opens your eyes to how much this government is capable of.
According to Longo, issues began in May when he was first contacted by a DEC officer implying an issue with him having Peanut.
On May 16th, an officer reached out to me and told me that Peanut was no longer able to be in New York State and would never be able to be in New York State. And in which I replied, I'm going to be taking my wildlife rehabber's exam in August. And he stated that even with my wildlife rehabber's testing and certification, that I still wouldn't be allowed to have Peanut. And that's all so false.
Longo says they both passed the test and were waiting for things to be finalized when the animals were taken.
All we want is justice for this, and we want the viewers and we want the world to see, what changes can come from this.
WENY News also reached out to the Chemung County Attorney's Office and has yet to hear back. In the meantime, Longo says they continue to be thankful for the support they've received from the community.
Franklin County Court of Common Pleas Judge Kimberly Cocroft says she has reached her breaking point.
This is not something that I wanted to do. This was the very last resort.
This week, Cocroft filed a federal lawsuit against the Franklin County Prosecutor's Office. and 20 of her fellow judges and court employees claiming racial and gender discrimination. She says she's experienced this treatment for the past 3.5 years. One of the first incidents happened in December of 2021, after she had just been elected to serve as an administrative judge. Cockcroft says 2 judges came into her office to give her advice.
They told me that they had heard that I was aggressive, I was unapproachable, I was not friendly, and they wanted to help me to have a better year of service.
So Cockcroft says they shared some suggestions.
One of the judges gave me a list of black women whom I should be more like. And he asked me if I had ever heard of these women, and then he said, you need to be more like them.
It's treatment that Cockcroft says only continued to get worse, creating a hostile work environment that she says is taking a toll.
I don't want to break out in hives driving into work. I don't want to lose my hair, which has happened. I just want to be able to do the work that I was elected to do.
It's a problem Cockcroft says she has continually tried to address and rectify since the beginning of this year.
And what I have received in return is continued disrespect and insult. I've been ignored. My concerns have been ignored.
But Cockcroft says she remains hopeful the lawsuit may not have to move forward.
When you say you're still hopeful something different could happen, what do you mean by that?
I always held out hope, and maybe that's the eternal optimist in me, that someone would reach out and say, hey, we hear you, we see you, we recognize why you're concerned, we apologize for what's happened, we're willing to work with you to make this different and better.
Okay, folks, an ex-CIA officer gets 30 years for drugging, filming, and assaulting dozens of women. I know the story sounds familiar, but that was the FBI guy you're thinking about. This is a CIA guy. Okay. All right, a former CIA officer has been sentenced to 30 years in prison for drugging, sexually assaulting, and filming more than 24 women in multiple countries over more than a decade. Brian Jeffrey Raymond, age 48, was also ordered to serve a lifetime of supervised release, pay $260,000 in restitution to the victims, and register as a sex offender after leaving prison. He'll be 80 when he leaves prison. The Justice Department said, okay, today's sentence ensures that the defendant will be properly marked as a sex offender for life and will spend a substantial portion of the rest of his life behind bars, said U.S. Attorney Matthew Graves. Raymond of La Mesa, California, pleaded guilty last year to 1 count each of sexual abuse, abuse of sexual contact, coercion and enticement, and transportation of obscene material, punishable by 24 to 30 years. Okay. As part of that plea agreement, Raymond admitted to drugging and engaging in non-consensual sexual acts with 4 women and non-consensual sexual contact with 6 others. He also acknowledged drugging 2 other women and taking either photos or videos of 28 victims, while they were fully or partially nude without their knowledge or permission. Good grief. Many of the recordings show Raymond touching and manipulating the victims' bodies while they were unconscious and incapable of consent, prosecutors wrote at the time, adding that he attempted to delete the footage once he learned of the criminal investigation. Prosecutors said in court filings that Raymond had engaged in a 14-year-long criminal scheme to exploit women. The defendant's goal was simple: to sexually and physically assault women when they were at their most vulnerable, to create lasting collection of photographs and videos memorializing his abhorrent deeds. The assaults took place in government-leased housing in Mexico City and other locations, which authorities did not specify, between 2006 and 2020 when he was arrested. Raymond was employed by the U.S. government at the U.S. Embassy in Mexico City from August 2018 to May 2020, according to the FBI, which says he lived in numerous other countries, including Peru and the U.S., where he resided in the Washington, D.C. and San Diego areas. He speaks Spanish, Mandarin Chinese, the Bureau said, and met many of his victims on dating apps. Prosecutors said some of the victims had known Raymond for years. Okay, the case against Raymond began in May 2020 when a naked woman was seen screaming for help from the balcony of his Mexico City residence. You guys. Raymond admitted to having sexual intercourse with her, but the woman reported that she had no memory of events after consuming drinks and food provided by Raymond. Oh. Agents searched Raymond's electronic devices where they discovered hundreds of photos depicting at least 24 unconscious and nude and partially nude women. Court filings reviewed by NPR said they found 487 videos and images of unconscious women in various states of undress on multiple devices belonging to Raymond, as well as searches for terms such as passed out, ambient, and alcohol, blah, blah, blah. Okay, The FBI said almost all the women involved experienced memory loss during their time with Raymond and had no knowledge of the photographs, videos, or the physical contact. Okay, in 14 years, Raymond exploited his trust position as a U.S. government representative to lure women into his confidence, the FBI said. Okay, the FBI thanks the brave women. Many of these women were watched in the Washington, D.C. courtroom as the sentence was handed down. Okay, women described the shock and pain of learning of what had happened to them. Raymond's victims filled 4 rows of the courtroom, and 12 of them took to the stand and asked to be giving the maximum sentence. Wow. Okay. There's probably a lot more, but the fact of the matter is, that super bad apple, look at that guy. Mr. Cool, Mr. Slick is going to be in jail till he's 80 years old. All right. Thanks for being here, folks.
Joel Bassoff, 17 Beach Lane.
Your witness.
So if the council adopts ordinance 2239 attempting to control decorum, the council will have adopted an unconstitutional ordinance. Your effort to ban costumes, non-medical masks, and props violates the free speech guarantee of the First Amendment to the U.S. Constitution. The public knows why you're trying to ban the masks, costumes,
Can I clarify that statement, legal?
No, it's his time.
It is incorrect.
Well, don't take my time for it.
Okay.
Right. The public knows why you're trying to ban masks, costumes, and props, even though it's unconstitutional to do that. At previous meetings, members of the public mocked the council by showing up with masks, costumes, and props. You don't like being embarrassed, so you're trying to ban the people who humiliate you. But the best way to avoid humiliation is to stop doing stupid things like trying to clamp down on constitutionally protected symbolic speech. The more you try to suppress constitutional rights to free speech, the more vigorously the public is going to fight back. And if you get sued, you will lose. Now, you adopted an ordinance to cut public speakers back from 6 minutes to 4 minutes. That means to get our ideas across, we're going to have to speak at least 33% more efficiently. They say that a picture is worth 1,000 words. So to illustrate why this ordinance 2239 is wrong, I'm holding up an American flag to represent the constitutional values that we should be loyal to.
I'm going to give you a warning, and if you continue, I will have to forfeit. You'll have to forfeit your time.
Well,
sir, you're forfeiting your time.
It's my constitutional right to do this. If you get sued, you will lose. My suggestion to you is that you get a second opinion from competent counsel because you are wrong. You are interfering with the performance of this meeting by interfering with the right to speech of a member of the public. You're the right to free speech, and it should stop now. I'd like to continue.
They didn't pass the law yet.
This is an arbitrary.
If he doesn't sit down,
This is an arbitrary decision.
his time is forfeited.
And it violates the law. Your time should be forfeited. Your position should be forfeited. By your actions, you forfeit your right to preside over this meeting.
Please have it in the room. Just let it room. Thank you.
Shame on you.
Officer, you can have him in the room.
No, my time's forfeited. I'll sit
Mr.
back down.
Bassoff, you continued after your time was forfeited. You continued after the officers told you to sit down. You continued after the council president repeatedly asked you to stop. You've now been asked to be removed from the chambers.
There's no reason to remove me from the chambers because I am not interfering with the
clearly
quorum.
chosen to
I'm ready.
violate the rules of the
Excuse me.
quorum.
Excuse me. I'm ready to sit here quietly, and I will not interfere with your decorum. So I have a right to be here.
Can I get a second?
Second.
All in favor? All right. This council meeting has been recessed for 5 minutes. We'll be back at 7:24.
Are you ejecting him from the meeting? Officers, are you ejecting him from the meeting?
Yeah, but I want Brown.
Why are you making him leave the building?
Yeah, that's a good question. Why do I have to leave the building? I'm not trespassing.
Council president's not in charge of the rest of the building.
I'm just in the meeting. There's no business inside the building at this point because the building's closed.
Council President doesn't run the building. The Council President's not in charge of the building.
You should check with the business administrator because she's in charge of the facilities.
Interrupted the meeting. Can we just go off to the side?
Let it go. Give people their time. Let them work.
Chief,
Whatever they want to wear.
Chief, a resident wants to speak to you.
Move on. It is a waste of taxpayer time. It is a waste of your time.
Yeah, but you have to follow constitutional rules. I can't be. I don't have the quorum. Right, but I'm not violating. I don't want to separate you. Right, but I'm not violating the rules of decorum. We made a determination before, so if it wasn't you, it was somebody else. You have to, but you have to even give a warning. You didn't even give a warning. He did. Right, and I sat down. Listen. He gave a warning, and I sat down. No, he said he wanted you removed. We're in a tough position. Well, he wanted that, but he didn't have the right to want that. He's exceeding the bounds of his authority, and he's putting you in a very. He's putting all of the position. Yeah. Because you know how I feel about it. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. I don't want to sit down. No, I just. Why don't we bring her out? All right, bring her out.
Council meeting?
Yeah. Just want to come over and get my stuff. You guys have a good day.
America the Beautiful, we still have a right to speak, and no one should silence us or tell us how long we can talk. And I know one thing, I respect this flag. Many people died for this flag, for this country, and I gotta say one more thing. Last election, you saw what happened. Don't think you can't all be replaced, because when the next election comes, we'll be out. Thank you.
And again, another big show put to rest. Thank you so much for being here to watch the Bad Apple Report. I really do appreciate it. And I'm going to whip up another batch of Bad Apples just for you, and we'll see you right back here tomorrow morning at 7:30 a.m. bright and early. Have a great day.